All right. Dream Team 718, welcome to another week of discussion. This week, we're talking about the qualities of leadership and communication. So, I first want to touch on how good communication can benefit you being a good leader, right? So, we're talking about, you're having very clear and very direct communication. So, and when you're in a leadership role, people who report to you, right? You definitely, when you're given direction, you want them to understand what is it that you expect of them. I find it interesting that a lot of people, that's part of the issues that they have. They do not know how to manage that, right? So what I wanted to know is, how do you guys would recommend, people, what kind of communication techniques would you guys recommend to be used for people who are now stepping into the roles of leadership or leaders who are looking to improve?
That's good. We definitely gonna need 5 hours, but it's good. It's good. It's a good start. I think the best place to be, so communication is also, it's listening and speaking. So I think to be a great leader, you have to be a good listener. Because you have to be able to listen to what your team is saying, even when they're not saying it. So I think you got to start with being a good listener, and then also knowing your audience, because the way Ron learns is different from the way Mike learns. And if I try to communicate with Mike the way I communicate with Ron, I might miss him. So I gotta be able to find like how do you learn? Do I need to send it via email? Do I need to just, there's some people you just say it and they get it, and there's other people that's like you need to email it and spell it out for them, and then they like got it. So everybody's different.
One of the things that I've learned is something called three-way communication, right? So you give the directive and have the person repeat it to you. So this way, if there's a miscommunication, you can clear that up right away.
Right.
So therefore, when they go and they're doing whatever it is that you asked of them, they know what's expected. So that's one thing I would recommend. Three-way communication. So some people may think of it being condescending. Some people can view it that way, but I feel three-way communication is one of the best ways to convey what is it that you expect.
I think with that, I think that goes in alignment with what I've been thinking about, which is just being clear and concise. I think a lot of miscommunication could be avoided, like by being clear and concise. I think when you give somebody directive or instruction, like there is the expectation that you want to get this thing done. Like I'm giving it to Gary because I need him to accomplish such and such task, right? And with that, if I don't communicate effectively, he may get it done, he may do it right, but there's also the chance, especially if he's new, I can't expect or assume that he's going to know how to maneuver or do this thing. Just because he's, let's say, done a similar role in the past, doesn't mean in this place they don't know how to navigate, let's say, the database or whatever the case might be. Or maybe it's a different system. Like you want to effectively. And then I think to your point, like them saying it back, like not being condescending, but just kind of maybe reiterate, like, hey, I'm not trying to like baby you by any means or micromanage. I just want to make sure that you can do your job to the best of your ability. And I think that's something that needs to be said as well, so that people don't feel like they're being baby, but they feel like, oh, wow, this is encouraging. You want to see me do the best possible job I can. So you're asking me, how I can see this thing through.
So Mike, you said effective communication. Can you expand on that a little bit? Like,
sure,
be effective.
I think being effective, because I'm talking about clear and concise, like assuring that what you say is communicated well. And that just goes along with like if you're going to email it, like making sure that it may be small to some people, but making sure there's no typos. Like missing a letter or missing something can like misconstrue entire like directive from a superior. You know, it can be the difference between a project getting done, you know, the right way and a project getting prolonged because the person's now bugging out trying to figure out what to do. So I think communicating effectively is like, first and foremost, like I know what I want to get done. You know, like my superiors told me what needs to get done. Now when I'm going to present it to you, I'm already assured that I understand it. Now I need to make sure that you understand it. Once you understand it, now I'm confident that it'll get done. And I'm also confident, like, hey, before you walk out, if you need anything, feel free to talk to me. Some people, like they have or do have unapproachable supervisors, which, you know, I feel like I've had in the past. Like they'll say, oh yeah, you can ask me, but then you ask them and it's just like, I wish I hadn't.
Right. Yeah.
I think you both of you guys, number one, took bits and pieces of what I was going to say, which means I think we're all in agreement. But if you break it down, really, communication is the biggest thing is just getting that message across effectively, right? Mm-hmm. That's like the bare, if you strip it down, that's the bare, you know, that's the framework of it. Now, I think, you know, for me, first of all, I think the communicator, the leader needs to have a good grasp of the vision, right? If we're talking leadership positions, you're trying to take a team somewhere, you need to have a good idea of that in order to communicate effectively. Because it comes out, if you don't know what you're talking about, it's easy to pick up on. I think Gary put up raised a good point. Not everybody's gonna be as receptive or would react the same as other people. So you have to tailor the way you speak to somebody or the way you communicate with somebody to make sure that you increase the effectiveness of that interaction. So, for example, you know, Gary would know this too, because you've managed a staff before. You know, I'm sure everybody to a certain extent. I'm going to talk a certain way to someone who needs tough love differently than someone who gets easily discouraged when you get at that person. Right. So you have to understand who you're talking to and tailor the way you communicate based on that person's characteristics. I think the biggest problem with leaders, quote unquote leaders, is that they treat everybody the same way. Their subordinates or their staff the same way.
So would you say that understanding your staff or your co-workers, right? Understanding their skill and their abilities,
100%,
right,
yeah,
would help your communication with them as well.
For sure, 100%, because now you know how to talk to them effectively, and now you know the methods that you need to take in order to ensure that what you're trying to communicate gets across effectively.
Yep.
You know,
perfectly, bro.
And the last thing that I want to say is what Mike brought up is just be concise. You know, I hate when you write a whole essay for something that could be pared down to like a couple of sentences. Because we're just now, if you think about it too, if you communicate and you just stretch everything out so much, some people might just start tuning you out. You know, so I forgot who said it, but I heard this a long time ago, because I used to read a lot of leadership books when I was promoted to like manager and whatnot. But pretty much the person said, you know, if you could get your point across in 5 words, don't use 50 if you could get your point across in 5 words, because now what you're saying is more impactful. It's clearer, it's concise, and the chances of a miscommunication is significantly lower if you're just concise, straight to the point, and that's it.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, so I think those are the 3 things I would say for me personally, which I found that works, is number 1, you know, as a leader, you have to have a good idea of the vision of where you're taking your people to. That's the foundation. And then number 2, understanding your people, and not treating them the same way when you communicate with each and every one. And then number 3, just keep your message, get your point across as concise and as succinctly as possible.
That's a perfect wrap up, man. That's perfect. You know, now we know that not everyone's perfect, right? And you know, there are people who stumble when it comes to communication, and they struggle sometimes. And I do want to touch on some of the mistakes that I made in communication, so people can, so at least someone can, like, when they hear it, they can recognize that, hey, you know what, I do that. Maybe I need to stop doing that. You know, and one of them is in communication using lingo. You know, because sometimes, you know, that get lost in translation because not everyone understands what you're saying. All right. You know, it's you know, it's interesting when some people's like, oh, you know, you know, I remember when my mom used to say, you know, I'm gonna use my office voice. You know, it's like, you're just speaking clearly. You know, like, you know, because I'm from Guyana, and you could hear the accent a little bit, you know, but my parents have a very heavy accent, especially when they're around their friends. So now when they go to work, all of a sudden they can speak very clearly, very concise, and just like, so why can't you speak like that all the time, right? So I think that's one of the things that a lot of people need to keep in mind, that, you know, when you're speaking, you know, you need to speak in a way that everyone around you understands what you're saying.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that, especially, I don't know if it's a New York thing because I haven't lived outside of New York. I think we're always in a rush to do everything, even talk. So many times, a lot of people stutter and stammer because they feel like they have to get it out quickly, and
Yes.
their mind is like, I got you, but you got to slow down. So like when I worked at Lehman, we did like a public speaking class workshop for the young adults to help them learn about filler words like ums and you know what I means and likes.
Yes.
Those are just filler words because your brain is trying to connect one thought to the next. So is just it's a filler to kind of help your mind bridge time between your thought that you have and the thought that you want to have. It's a filler word. It just fills in space. And a lot of our young people feel that it's a race to speak, and it's not. So some of my favorite speakers is, not for nothing, since I met Ron, I like to hear Ron talk because Ron is never in a rush to say anything, right? And then when Ron does say something really fast, I know he's excited about something, because normally his normal tone is like very even keeled. Whether I can come, y'all know I'm more excitable, like, you know, I'm kind of like turned sometimes. So I'm like, yo, Ron, it's gonna be crazy. I can see it. It's wild. And Ron's like, yeah, that's really cool. So, did you think about did you call Ben yet to ask him about what he thinks? No, gonna do that now, right? And it's like, it's that's what life coaches do. I guess that's a trademark of a life coach. Like, no matter if you're up or down, life coach is like,
you're
bam,
in the middle,
like even at all times, right? And I guess that's a perfect real life example. Don't be in a rush to say what you gotta say.
That's
and
true.
I guess one of the best examples of that is watch other speakers. So I watch guys like Nelson Mandela.
Oh, perfect.
He takes his time, bro. What's the rush? And he speaks, and he doesn't have the deepest voice. He don't have the loudest voice. His voice is almost like a hush, but when he talks, you listen.
Stop and you listen.
Stop and listen, right? So find your voice. That's another thing too. Find your
Another good example, I feel, is, I was going to bring it up, is my favorite speaker is Barack Obama.
Oh yeah.
I was
Sometimes he takes too long though.
Yeah.
But he just, again, he hits everything. He knows he has the vision. He knows where he's trying to go. He's concise, He speaks clearly. He knows his audience. And it's funny because when we were talking about being concise, the biggest thing I thought about was the worst example was the former guy in the White House who had 3 hour, like 3-4 hours just rambling. So to me, Barack Obama is just the epitome. And same thing with Nelson Mandela. It's like the way they're never in a rush, and the way the words that they use also. That's what I love about them, is that they just don't. They make sure they use the perfect word to describe something.
Right.
So that just makes everything. They're very. I love their. I get a lot of pleasure listening to. The height of the pandemic, I was playing a lot of Barack Obama's interviews. Not gonna lie, to just keep me somewhat sane.
It's interesting that you guys brought it up, because I believe it was Nelson Mandela that said, he learned this from his dad, who was a chief, right? Where he's like, always be the last person to speak. Because this way everyone in the room had a chance to say what they had to say. You listen to what they have to say, and now you can speak to everything that was said, and you could just, be concise, be clear, be straightforward, and that's it. Everyone feels that they've been heard, right? And you've been heard, and your vision has been communicated clearly now, where everyone is on the same page.
That's on point.
It's crazy that y'all mentioned Barack earlier, because I was definitely thinking about him before Ben mentioned him. And it's both of y'all said something I was thinking about, because then Gary mentioned the ums. And I noticed when I'm like recording for the Bible Let's Told by Bronx, like I noticed, I'll be like, so, for today's episode, talking about this, that, and the third, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to stop saying this. And I think it's to your point, it's probably because I'm nervous. I'm just started recording. I'm like, is this going to come out right? And it's funny, when I think about Barack, he's a great speaker. What bugs me about Barack, though, he'll be like, America, I'm here. like that.
His filler is a pause. It's not,
right.
Which I like better than like or
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think so. Because when you pause it lets people know that you're being thoughtful of what you're about to say.
I'm gonna watch some of his
in my opinion, that's how I take it.
When you use my biggest issue, it was using the word like.
Like was for me also.
I'm still working on just wiping it all from my vocabulary, like all across.
What about you know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
No, I
that too.
So instead of saying you know what I mean, just say what you mean. Tell me what you mean so I can understand it.
But Gary's right though. You really have to train your mind.
Yeah.
Into how you get your point across and organizing your thoughts and making sure the speed of how you're thinking kind of matches when it's coming out.
Yeah.
Because that's how you avoid the whole. At least it's you know what I mean, not like.
Not me. That's imagine Barack Obama. Sometimes Barack he reminds me of like an educated. I don't say educated, but almost like a more like political version of like DMX, because sometimes he will go really fast.
Yeah.
Like Barack was just, I know what's gonna happen. And like he'd be like, whoa, like he just sped through that track. And then like it's like real DMX's, but it's Barack, so he makes everything cool. So it's really dope. I think the other thing is, and I learned this actually from LL Cool J, right? LL Cool J, his grandmother used to have him read the dictionary. That's why when he used to rhyme, he used to use words that other rappers didn't use. So his grandmother used to have him read the dictionary. So I think one of the best ways to become a better communicator, so you can have more words under your disposal, is to read a lot and to read often.
Definitely.
And read things.
For sure.
And read things that challenge you, because now you'll start. Now you have a plethora of words to choose from, and the likelihood of you having to use and ands and all those fillers is not as deep because you got like a bunch of words to choose from. Your mind is like, I can say different things. I got variety. And a thesaurus. Thesaurus is legit too.
Definitely. I realized once I started reading, same thing happened. My lexicon, it just expanded, right? And it just, as I'm speaking to people, I remember I was speaking to someone and they're like, "Oh, you think you're better than me because you're using big words?" It's like, what big word did I use?
big word.
I'm just speaking with you. And I realized that really helped me. It really helped me. Just reading, it doesn't have to be the greatest. One of the things that helped me a lot was reading comic books. Believe it or not, reading comic books, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
So definitely I agree. Reading would definitely help you with phrasing, right? And pacing. Pacing definitely helps.
Definitely.
I think also we need to, like you mentioned, the big word thing. I think we need to stop doing that. I think we need to stop glorifying not knowing. It's like what Chris Rock said. Like some people just are proud to not know.
You think you can count 1, 2, 3, 5, 8? Count these rocks.
Big words is not. It's just the. Ron, you mentioned it's improving your effectiveness in communicating.
Correct.
Using the right word that matches what you're trying to communicate.
I agree.
And we should stop saying or equating the use of not even a big word, but a word that's foreign to us as someone trying to be better.
Yeah.
So that's just a small, I know it's not.
That's huge, though.
It's just a pet peeve of mine when people say big words. Dude, let's educate ourselves. Let's not be proud to not know things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's huge, bro, because a lot of our young men, young adults feel, and I've heard rappers talk about like Kendrick, where like they knew the answer, but they didn't want to say it, right? They knew what they had to say, but they didn't want to say it. Like for many of us, we have to downplay our intelligence because we feel that our community won't receive it. So we got to downplay it. But then also you also have to know your audience, right? So I think that's the cool thing about us who grew up in the inner city. We like, okay.
You can turn it a few different ways.
Yeah, you can say, because your lexicon is deep, like Ron said, you like, okay, I'm not gonna say, like, if you're talking to dudes around your way that haven't been places and spaces, you can mix it up. Like, so it's it's still gonna be super coherent, but you might want to throw some words in there.
Right.
Like, I'm not gonna drag it, like you can say things like that. Oh, okay. So to kind of, you're doing both and you like remixing it a little bit.
That like you said, that goes back to knowing your audience.
Yeah.
Code switching. Right? Code switching. That's really what it is.
Unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that phrase, man.
It sounds like you sell it out, right? It sounds like you sell it out, right? So can we just call it adaptation? Is it adaptation? Knowing your audience?
Yeah.
I like that.
That's what it is.
I like that.
So yes, definitely know your audience, and read. Don't stop reading. Never stop reading. It will help you tremendously. It will help you with not just being comfortable speaking, right? But being able to use more descriptive words. Words that, and it will help people relate to you more. So yeah, I agree with all that, fellas. Just definitely wow. I just remembered something. Sorry.
Oh man.
Yeah, I remember my daughter I was helping her with her homework, and I knew she knew the answer, but she pretended that she didn't. So I had a conversation. I was like, why were you there? She's like, well, you know, some of the kids in my class, you know, they don't know, so I don't want them to feel bad. I was like, no,
Wow.
no, no. This is not your responsibility. You know, like you continue doing what you're doing. If you know the answer, you know the answer. Do not, like you said, don't dumb it down just so you can fit in. You know.
Wow.
So yeah, as I was speaking, that just hit me. I was like, wow.
That's a great way to, man, that's a great story to put the bow on it, man.
Mm-hmm.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah. So fellas, thank you. I appreciate the input. This has been great. You know, I pray that this blesses someone and, you know, everyone benefits from it.
Absolutely.
All right. Look forward to seeing you guys next week, man.
All right.
Yes, sir.